Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company, 440 Sports Post-Game Live, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, where once again they are the presenting sponsors of the Stillman and Company program. Like and subscribe, and we'll load everybody in here again. YouTube at Stillman and Co. Like and subscribe. We're up over 3,200 subscribers. We want to keep that number going. Tell your friends. Again, the truth, the honesty, the depression, etc., surrounding the Tennessee Titans. And right now, CBS, if you're watching locally, CBS has sent us out for the Falcons-Patriots. I guess the great Mike Vrabel is trying to hold off the great Atlanta Falcons as we speak right now. But the Titans, losers at home today, 27-17 to the Los Angeles Chargers. And I guess I've got thoughts on the game, and I've got thoughts on the state of the team. And I'm going to start with the game itself, where I see a football team, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but I see a football team that I actually think is getting better. Like, I actually think the Tennessee Titans as a team, T-E-A-M, I actually think they are getting better. But I think there's a couple of things that are holding them back. Number one, their quarterback. I think he's holding them back. I mean, he had 53 passing yards at halftime. Again, where are some of the wow plays that Cam Ward was supposed to make to help save this team? When they drafted him, he's a winner, Jared. He's a dog. He'll step up in adversity, and he doesn't get where's that? Because I thought today, I didn't think Cam was very good. So I think that's one thing where the team's not getting better, is I'm not sure the quarterback's getting better. And the second thing is the coaching of this team. And the coaching of this team is terrible. Now, that's not all Mike McCoy's fault, because Mike McCoy inherited the coaching staff, and Mike McCoy inherited kind of the Callahan ethos as far as coaching this team is concerned. But Mike McCoy is kind of a pussy. And I think I'm starting to notice that on a week in, week out basis. And if they call another fucking Wildcat play, I'm going to lose my shit, because I never like those Wildcat plays. I don't even like it when you directly snap it to Derrick Henry. And I don't like those Wildcat plays because when it comes to taking the snap, your running backs do not practice taking the snap. I know that you'll run it a couple of times in practice so everybody knows where to go, but I'm talking about in practice every day. Cam Ward takes 100 snaps out of shotgun. So I want the ball in his hands. I also see the Chargers tush push every play, and I'm like, why can't you do that? And so on one hand, I see a football team that's getting better. I saw a game that was more competitive today than I thought it was going to be. I saw a second half where usually the Titans just kind of roll over and die in the second half. And I guess you can argue they kind of did, because it's not as if they lit up the scoreboard in the second half. But at the same time, and they also, gave up a 99-yard drive. They scored 3 points in the second half. And they gave up a 99-yard drive. But at the same time, like, they did put pressure on the Chargers in the second half of this game, which the Titans haven't done really against anybody in any of these games. They didn't even put pressure on Arizona. Arizona put pressure on Arizona. But in the second half of these games, I mean, even if it's the Raiders or the Patriots or the Colts or whomever, what happens is the Titans just get blown out in the second half. That didn't happen today. They covered the 9.5-point spread. I do feel like I'm seeing a football team that is getting better, but I have worry about the big picture, which is the quarterback. And you guys can tell me whatever you want to tell me about Cam Ward. I said this on Thursday's show, and I posted a video to go with it. And when I posted the video, all the replies were all the same, and they were all so predictable. And what I said on Thursday was, Cam Ward may be a product of this heinous situation. Bad roster, bad inexperienced front office, bad coach, already fired. Interim coach kind of looks like a bozo. No true number one receiver on the team. No real leadership on the team. All the things that I think you would like to have when you bring a rookie quarterback into the mix, they don't have any of. So maybe it's not his fault. I don't know. I'm not here to place the blame. I'm here to tell you what's going to happen or what they need to do to keep what's going to happen from happening if what's going to happen is bad. And the reason I bring this up is because I put out that video on Thursday where I said, look, it may not be Cam Ward's fault. I don't know whose fault it is, but I haven't seen anything this year from Cam Ward that makes me think Cam Ward is a franchise quarterback. And that is with Titan fans that are telling me he has proven this year he's a franchise. I'm like, based off of what? And the response was so freaking predictable when I posted that video. It was all the people that were like, you don't understand. He doesn't have a good team around him. I just said that. I said he doesn't have a good team around him. It might be. It might simply be because he's got such a bad team around him. Though I doubt if you put that team around Justin Herbert, that Justin Herbert would score 3 points in the second half or wouldn't be able to punch the ball in from the 1 yard line. But that's just me. The other response was, you're just looking for clicks, Jared. You're just, no. Again, if I was looking for clicks, this is how to play to the audience. For everybody out there that thinks that I just manufacture takes to get attention, here's how this works. If I wanted people to share and I wanted people to really push my shit out there, what I would do is the opposite of what I'm doing now. What I'm doing now is I'm telling the truth. I'm telling you what I see. I see a football team that overdrafted a quarterback in the first round, who doesn't have good mechanics, who, again, had 53 passing yards at halftime today. You scored 20 points, 14 on a pick six and a punt return for a touchdown. If you get 2 defense and special team scores in a game, you should win that game 95% of the time. And I don't think that's hyperbole. But again, I go back to the quarterback and I go back to people that are like, you're just doing this for clicks. If I wanted to get more clicks, if I wanted to get more shares, if I wanted to get more Titan fans, because again, who in Phoenix or who in Philadelphia or who in Miami really gives a rat's ass about the Tennessee Titans? If I wanted to get more shares and more clicks, I would say the opposite. Because then everybody would share it and everybody would say, see, this guy speaks the truth. This guy's telling you what it is. Because all I'd have to do is say, hey, did you see that play today where the pocket broke down and Cam Ward ran up and he dropped the ball off to Tajay Spears and Tajay Spears gained 30 yards? That is a sign that Cam Ward is that dude. And Callahan was a stupid bum, but if the Borgonzi, who's the greatest general manager ever, if Mike Borgonzi goes out there and he brings in a great coach, then it won't matter, and Cam Ward will be unleashed. If I did that stuff every day, it'd get so many shares. So many Titan fans would be like, oh my God, this is perfect. This is the best. This is great. This is, oh my God. But I don't believe that. And I feel like I'm very consistent about saying, hey, I only want to say the things that I actually believe. And when it comes to this shit football team, what I actually believe is the starting quarterback right now is a problem for this team. And they're not going to do anything about it because the way this works in the NFL is Cam won't get any of the blame for this year, because everybody will say it was the coaching and everybody will say it was the state of the roster. And everybody will say that it's a good thing that Cam took his lumps and he learned the hard way. And next year they're going to go spend a bunch of money in free agency. They'll go get him a new coach and all those things will save him. And then if we're having the same conversations this time next year, then the discussion will start to turn to Cam. But I'm looking at this and I'm seeing a football team where I actually think they are getting better outside of Cam Ward. Now, again, the coaching is still awful, but I think they're getting better. For starters, on offense, they're actually having some players emerge as guys that are legitimate NFL skill position players. Chimere DK, he reminds me a lot of Justin McCarron's, who used to be on the Titans. He might be a little bit faster than Justin McCarron's, but he reminds me a lot of Justin McCarron's. Well, Justin McCarron's was a number 2 receiver when you had an MVP at quarterback. So that's a starting caliber player. I thought the catch Gunnar Helm made, on a ball that wasn't a great throw by Cam, but I thought was a great job by Gunnar Helm in the fourth quarter to start that last drive that led to a field goal, where Gunnar Helm kind of boxed the guy out and I thought did a pretty good job. And I've just now realized that the score at the bottom of the screen is wrong. My bad. But I thought that Gunnar Helm, for the most part, I think he, again, I don't want to sit here and tell you that he's a starter in the NFL, because a starter in the NFL is a lot better than has a couple of catches and is a decent blocker. And, that, like, I look at Tucker Kraft and I'm like, there's a big difference right now between Tucker Kraft and between Gunnar Helm. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I see guys that are starting to emerge as solid players, even Skoronski. He's a freaking guard. And so I wouldn't build my team around a guard, and I wouldn't draft a guard with the 11th pick, but Skoronski's a solid offensive lineman. And okay, you can roll with that. And I thought today, and maybe some of this was the Chargers as much as anything else, but I actually thought the Titans, and I know the Chargers had a lot of offensive line injuries, and Joe Alt went down today, and Bobby Hart. Who remembers the one game Bobby Hart started for the Titans in 2021? And Bobby Hart went down today with an injury, although I've always liked Bobby Hart. Bobby Hart got hurt. So not to sit here and take away from what the Titans defense did by talking about all the injuries the Chargers have, but I actually thought the Titans defense played pretty tough today against the Chargers. They allowed 27 points. And again, without Jeffrey Simmons, that's not awful. Now, there were some in which Herbert made some excellent Herbert-like plays. I thought the pick six was a bad play by Herbert, but you have to make it, and they did. So I see a defense that's getting a little bit better. I like Cedric Gray. He's not a starting inside linebacker on a good team for me. I think he can be the 11th starter on a team. I don't think he'll ever be as good as David Long Jr. I think he's a little too small, maybe a little too slow, but again, I think you can survive with Cedric Gray on your ball club. Like, I am starting to see some guys get better, and I think that would be a good thing. But then when it comes to the Titans, it's like, okay, well, the coach is a moron running everything out of the Wildcat, and they can't score from the 1 yard line, which is embarrassing. And they're running more Wildcat plays from there. And then when it comes to the quarterback, I think he's hurting the team. Like, I think that the quarterback, and I think they need to do a better job with the quarterback. I think that they've already screwed the whole deal up by not building the team around kind of the infrastructure around the quarterback being the things that you would need for a young quarterback to be successful, like a strong running game or a tight end to throw the ball to. But I actually think that the Titans are getting better as a football team, and the quarterback is kind of staying the same, which is occasionally he'll make a nice backyard football play that'll be a nice little pickup. He can rifle the ball. Sometimes it's accurate. Most of the time it's not. His mechanics are awful, and he's going to miss guys coming underneath, and I don't think he's doing a very good job of recognizing protections. And maybe some of that is on the coaching staff, because they need to be in his ear. But there was one in particular where the right side of the line got blamed on the TV broadcast, but I watched the play when they were showing it on the replay, and Cam doesn't do anything before the snap to alert to the blitzer. So there's no slide and protection over to the right. So when the right inside backer comes on the blitz, that was not called out for the protection. So that's on the quarterback. You always see that when the quarterback sits there and says things like 53 is the mic, 53 is the mic. And so in this case, they had an inside backer blitz through the middle, and the tackle went with the outside rusher and not with the inside blitzer. And in that case, it is the responsibility of the quarterback looking at the blitzer to know, hey, ball's either got to come out hot, or I've got to take off running, or I've got to do something. If I don't adjust the protection, that's my guy. He's running at me. I got to do something about it. Cam didn't do anything about it. He got sacked. that is something that a young quarterback's got to get figured out. And I don't know if this young quarterback's going to do that. So I'm not trying to be mean here. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to make this, about, oh, Cam this, Cam that. I'm not. But I think this team is getting better. I think there are young players that are showing a little bit of promise. And then I think the quarterback, man, I think he is a mess right now. Like, I think the quarterback is a mess, and I don't think he's getting better. And what's going to happen again is they're going to go out and hire a new coach, and the hope has to be that the new coach saves the young quarterback. They're going to go sign a bunch of free agents this offseason, and I'm not going to poo-poo free agency because it didn't work 2 years ago because they signed all the wrong guys. But I want them to take the ball, and I'm not going to say take it out of Cam's hands, because when the Titans take the ball out of Cam's hands, if I were to say take it out of his hands, they're going to run the fucking Wildcat all the time, and I think that's stupid. But I do think that they are running into this issue when it comes to Cam of, hey, he needs to either be holding a clipboard or turning around and handing it off 30 times a game, or throwing safe passes, check downs, hey, take the shot here, but if it's not there, just drop it off. Let's move him around a little bit. Let's use some bootlegs. Let's use some play action. And instead, it's like, we're going to try to trick them every other play. And I just don't think that that's how you develop a quarterback. And I don't think this quarterback is developing at all. And I don't know if it's the quarterback's fault. I don't think it's the quarterback's fault. But again, I keep telling you, and I don't know if you want to hear it or not, but the situation for the young quarterback, I mean, it's a nightmare. And it would be a nightmare for anybody, even like a Peyton Manning. But some of those guys, like a Manning or a Burrow, they have the talent to be able to overcome that. And Cam Ward, no disrespect to him, Cam Ward never had that level of talent. I heard Willie Donick on my old station this week, and I love Willie. And if you remember Willie, he was shocked that the Titans didn't trade for more draft picks and they took Cam. But he was like, if you just are going to hold Cam to the standard that he has to be the number one pick, then you're never going to be happy. And I'm like, that's awful that we're sitting here in November of his rookie year saying, well, maybe he'll be an okay player down the road, but the idea of him being a great player, no. And I'm like, okay, then you need to address you need to adjust properly. So that's the first thing. Again, I see a football team that's getting better. Joey Sly made his field goals, which again is a step up. I thought for the most part, the defense tackled well. There's one guy on the defense who gets picked on every single time. And that guy is Jalen Armour Davis, number 18. He is terrible. But for the most part, I thought the defense, with a bunch of guys who looked like they were trying to get traded today, like Draymond Jones was out there and Jihad Ward was out there. Those guys were playing like, hey, NFL, please trade for me by Tuesday and get me out of this shithole. And I'll give them credit because they played very well today. Defensive line played well. Tavondre Sweat, he's been on the trade block. He got up there like he was going to dunk a basketball at one point today. Cody Barton, who I think kind of sucks, he had a pick six. So I will say, when it comes to the Titan defense, I was impressed. I thought the Titan defense did their job today. I thought the Titan defense did their job. The special teams, I don't even know what to make of the special teams anymore, because the punt return touchdown for Chimere DK, we've been waiting for a Titan player to have a punt return touchdown, I think, for eons. I think that's the first punt return touchdown, if I'm not mistaken, since Darius Raynaud in 2012. And so we've been waiting forever through the eras of Craig Ackerman and Colt Anderson for the Titans to find somebody to return the ball and fucking run with it. And they've got that guy in Chimere DK. But I think the reason why Chimere DK scored that touchdown was because the Charger punter, J.K. Scott, who I actually think is a pretty good punter, J.K. Scott absolutely drilled the crap out of the ball, and he absolutely outkicked his coverage. And that allowed DK, who is very fast, to get a running start and to run with the ball. But they did score a touchdown. Special teams made their field goals, but am I the only one that notices all these special teams penalties on the Titans? Like every time there's a kickoff, there's a flag, and it's like illegal formation on the kicking team, or there's some sort of gaff, from how many guys are in to protect on the punt team kind of thing. They're getting penalized all the time, but screw it. They scored a touchdown. Yeah, 2 touchdowns on defense and special teams. And so that should be enough to give you a chance to win. But you can't do it when you get 10 first downs. And again, another nugget as far as the defense is concerned, time of possession. The Titans held the ball for 25 minutes and 40 seconds. That is heinous. Chargers 34-20. You cannot expect an NFL defense to give you a real shot to win the game if you're asking them to go out there and defend for 34 minutes. And that's an every week thing. So, again, when it comes to the Titans, I mean, the stats that define the game for me, again, on offense, they had 10 first downs to 21. They were 1 of 9 on third down. They 4.7 yards per play. They threw for 118 yards. That's terrible. They were 0 of 2 in the red zone. Terrible. But they kept it close because they had 2 touchdowns on defense and special teams. And then I want to get to the offensive line here for a second. Because as somebody puts into the chat, Dan Moore was a waste of money. So I think it's a lot more complicated as far as just saying like, oh yeah, this sack is Dan Moore's fault, or that sack, that plays on J.C. Latham. And I go back to that one play where that inside linebacker for the Chargers split the right side of the offensive line, and J.C. Latham went with the outside pass rusher, and I think Zeitler went with the defensive tackle. And so the linebacker was able to run up completely untouched right there and smack Cam Ward. And I'm like, that is Cam Ward's responsibility. That, again, if Cam Ward before the play sits there and says, hey, and I think it was number 0 that sacked him. So 0's the mic. And he's saying like, hey, center, you get the tackle. Guard, you account for the linebacker. Tackle, you account for the edge rusher. Now Cam's got the other inside backer. He didn't make that adjustment before the play. So if he doesn't make that adjustment before the play, as far as the protection is concerned, that inside linebacker that sacked Cam Ward is Cam Ward's responsibility. So Cam has to watch him. And if Cam sees that he drops into coverage, then Cam knows, okay, I've got a little bit more time. If Cam sees the linebacker coming at him, then Cam's like, I got to get rid of the ball. Cam didn't do that when the linebacker came on the blitz. The reason I bring that up is, again, Ross Tucker blamed the right side of the offensive line, and it's easy to blame the right side of the offensive line. But in that particular protection, I actually think the fault lies with Cam. Now, there were some sacks in the fourth quarter, 2 that Dan Moore gave up, that I'm sorry. And I am a Dan Moore proponent, and I understand why they signed Dan Moore for the money they signed him to. But he is making too much money to give up a couple of those sacks. And I understand. I told you when you signed Dan Moore, and people said, well, his PFF numbers aren't that great, and he led the league in sacks allowed. And I said, look, Dan Moore is a starting left tackle in the National Football League. And you may say he's not a good starting left tackle. That's fine. But he is a starting left tackle on a playoff team in the NFL. He has been the starting left tackle of the Pittsburgh Steelers for 4 years, and for 3 years, they made it to the playoffs, which means he may not be great, but he's good enough to be the starting left tackle on a playoff caliber team. Nicholas Petit-Frere cannot start on a team that makes the playoffs because he is so bad that he will keep his team single-handedly from being able to make the playoffs. So Dan Moore's an upgrade. And I understand you're not going to get $25 million worth of production, although the going rate for tackles is now into the, and now we're talking top elite tackles, is in the 30-32 range. You're not going to get $25 million worth of production out of him. You had to pay the you suck, and this is a starting tackle that hit the market tax. I mean, Kansas City has been paying through their asses for these tackles over the last couple of years, and they're not worth a shit. Like the guy they got from San Francisco this year, he sucks. Jawan Taylor, he sucks. So, like, it's hard for tackles to get to the market, and then you have to pay a suck tax in order to get them to come here. But you can't get beat by a guy who just got traded just on a simple rush. And that's what happened in the fourth quarter. And I understand when you've got good and elite pass rushers out there, you've got to protect bad tackles. I mean, I remember one time watching a Titans-Browns game in 2020, and Taylor Lewan had torn his ACL, and so David Quessenberry was starting at left tackle. And there was like a 3rd and 11 late in the game, and Myles Garrett is lined up on David Quessenberry, and he just comes and sacks Tannehill. And I just shrugged my shoulders, and I said, that's going to happen. That when you get into that situation, that's going to happen. Where a Myles Garrett freed up on a borderline practice squad player in David Quessenberry is going to get to your quarterback. Odafe Owe, and I know he's had success in the NFL, he just got traded. Odafe Owe is not Myles Garrett. Dan Moore Jr. is making way too much money to just allow a simple stunt to beat him like he did at the end of the drive, or a simple rush off the edge to beat him to start that drive. That's unacceptable. And so that is an issue. That, again, the offensive line, I actually think is much better than they were last year. I think the offensive line is passable. I think if the Titans would ever get the lead in some of these games, they could run the football with more power. The problem is they don't really have a power back to run the football. But some of the blocking today, I mean, some of it, they're making too much money to be that crappy. So, again, Dan Moore's better than what you've had to deal with. But at the same time, I mean, he's got to bow up. They've got to bow up, and they've got to stop guys like Odafe Owe. The offensive line has got to bow up. The play calling's got to get a little bit better, a little bit more creative. I think the offensive line is much better than they've been the last 3 or 4 years, but they are going to have to push somebody back and get the ball into the end zone. And the play calling is going to have to be a little bit more creative too. And I don't mean call a trick play every 5 plays, which apparently Bo Hardigree has a giant boner in his fucking pants for. Because, I mean, he tried the flea flicker, and that didn't work. They tried that end around, where Pollard, I guess, took the ball out of the Wildcat, and then he ran towards Ward, and Ward started to run. I'm like, what the? Stop with the bullshit and just run normal plays. Let's master the normal plays first, and then we can throw some trickery in there. So that gets me all worked out as well. But I'll tell you, man, I'm so ready for this season to be over. And that's the saddest and most depressing part of all this, is that how many teams right now in the NFL are their fan bases really legitimately sitting there saying, God, I cannot wait for this season to end? It cannot be half of them. You, the Jets, the Dolphins, Cleveland, New Orleans, and the Giants. Did I miss anybody? That's what, 6 teams that are just sitting there saying, we wait all year for football season. We wait all January, February, March, April, May. We love the draft. Free agency, June OTAs. We get excited rookie minicamp because we picked 4th. And so when we pick 4th, we get to see our guys out there at rookie minicamp with a little tape on their helmets. And we wait and we wait and we wait. And finally in September, after waiting forever, we have to go back to school. We have to go back to work. But at least we get football season back. Amen. And we as Titan fans are halfway through the season, and I don't know about you, I cannot wait for this season to end. But the saddest part is that this is just me speaking. With Cam Ward as the quarterback, who I think is limited, and I think will only be able to succeed under a very special set of circumstances, with Cam Ward at quarterback and with Chad Brinker running the operation, with a hand-picked Mike Borgonzi, who's an inexperienced general manager, and they're going to go find a coach, it's not like I have a lot of faith that next year will be much better. And so I'm so ready for this season to end, but I'm not even excited about next season because the guys that are going to be making the coaching hire are the same guys that picked this quarterback with what I think is going to be an underwhelming overdraft in Cam Ward. I talked to somebody whose opinion I value a lot, and I said, am I wrong? I'm a big believer that how you do anything is how you do everything. And I'm like, am I wrong for having no faith in Brinker and Borgonzi to get all this stuff right simply because I think they blew it with Cam? That I think they should have taken the trade. I think they should have recognized what Cam was. They should have taken the trade. They should have tried to build the team up around a veteran quarterback, won 5, 6, 7, 8 games this year, tried to be competitive. And then when you think you really love a quarterback, go for it and try to make the move. And they didn't. And I don't know what their plan was, but it couldn't have been firing the coach 6 games into the season. And the things that they have on their team right now, they spent all that money on Dan Moore. How's that working out for them? They didn't get a pass rusher on defense. How's that working out for them? They don't really have a lot of good wide receivers. How's that working? I look at that and I'm like, is that a sign that these guys don't know what they're doing? And I think that's the sad part is I need something that tells me these guys know what they're doing for me to get excited about next season, because I am so ready for this season to be over, but I'm not sure I have much faith that these guys are going to get it right for next season. And next season really starts right now. And that is with the trade deadline that's coming up Tuesday as the Titans enter the bye. First, though, let me tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They are the proud presenting sponsor of this program. I absolutely love Hiller. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They've been in business since 1990. They are family-owned and operated. With 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be or the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work performed, they will make it right. Learn more at happyhiller.com. Professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians who come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. Again, I know this because I use Hiller at my home. Care is their core value, and they believe that when they care about others, everybody wins. And they'll take care of the customer on every job, every time. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Nashville Predators, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and the Tennessee Volunteers. That's Hiller. My guys at Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. So I want to get into this trade deadline stuff because there may be some moves before we go live tomorrow at 2:00. And then I promise that as soon as we go over the trade deadline, we will get to your reaction here on the program. But there have been a lot of rumors and a lot of gossip surrounding the Titans. And a lot of the rumors and gossip are kind of the same. And they're coming from, I think, places where the Titans probably do a lot of business. And that includes the league-owned NFL Network, where Ian Rappaport had a story today out that I'm going to give you the Jared Stillman transcription, which was they want to trade Calvin Ridley. So I don't know what they'd get in return for Calvin Ridley, but it looks like they want to trade Calvin Ridley. It looks like they want to trade Tony Pollard. It looks like they want to trade one or two of those edge rushers that they have, Jihad Ward, Arden Key, and I think they want to trade Key. Jihad Ward, Arden Key, Draymond Jones, and it feels like they want to trade Chikakonkwo. The other guy whose names keep coming up, or the other guys whose name keeps coming up in all of this, is T'Vondre Sweat. And that is very eyebrow-raising when it comes to T'Vondre Sweat. And the reason it's very eyebrow-raising is because the Titans took T'Vondre Sweat with the 38th pick 2 drafts ago. Now, a lot of people are circling this and saying, well, this is Mike Borgonzi not wanting a Ran Carthon guy, which on the surface makes sense. They didn't want Jarvis Brownlee Jr. They traded him away for a bag of footballs, and now they don't want T'Vondre Sweat. Paul Kaharski has said that he believes Ran had a certain type of acceptance and personality to deal with guys who might be a little out there like a Brownlee or a little lazy like a Sweat that perhaps Mike Borgonzi and this new group is not interested in. So here's what I'm going to tell you when it comes to the T'Vondre Sweat stuff. I think the Titans want to trade T'Vondre Sweat, but I think they're worried. Because I think they're worried. They can trade away Draymond Jones and they can have a pick swap and there be not much that comes back in return. You know, they deal Draymond Jones in a 7th and they get a 6th in return. And I don't think the fans are going to go nuclear on them for that. If they trade away T'Vondre Sweat, and it's like the Jarvis Brownlee deal, where you used the 38th pick on him 2 years ago, and you turn around and you deal him in a 6th and you get a 5th in return, the fan base is going to go nuts. And I actually think the fan base has every right to go nuts. I'm not saying that I would use the 38th pick in the draft on a run-stuffing defensive tackle with a bunch of red flags who doesn't rush the passer, which is exactly what T'Vondre Sweat was. And I kept reading what everybody had to say after the Titans drafted T'Vondre Sweat, which is, I wouldn't have taken him that high. Or as one executive told The Athletic after the draft, that guy is going to break your heart. But I also understand that a run-stuffing DT does have value on a football team. Not the 38th overall pick in the draft value, but there is actual value in a run-stuffing DT. It's about $11 million a year. I think that's what DJ Reader makes for the Detroit Lions. $11 million. T'Vondre Sweat was a solid run-stuffing DT last year. Now, T'Vondre Sweat has been hurt a lot of this year, and without Jeffrey Simmons in there, he's been kind of a no-show. But that doesn't mean trade him for nothing. And then we hear that perhaps it's the personality. Perhaps it is the fact that all of those things that everybody warned us about when the Titans drafted T'Vondre Sweat with the 38th pick, perhaps that's what the Titans are seeing, that they'd like him to be more motivated. Well, I've always told people this. The old idiom when it comes to the draft is dumb guys stay dumb, fat guys stay fat, injured guys stay injured. If you were expecting T'Vondre Sweat, a dumb fatty, to be something else, he's never going to be that. So if you deal him, that's fine, because I do think what he was last year is probably his ceiling. A good, solid, run-stuffing DT. And that does not make or break a franchise. You can have the best big, fat, run-stuffing DT in the NFL, and it's not going to make you a Super Bowl contender. You cannot have the best quarterback in the NFL and not make the playoffs. It just doesn't happen. Tom Brady, his last year in Tampa Bay, single-handedly willed that team with all those offensive line injuries and a terrible defense into the playoffs. But at the same time, I just don't like the idea of getting rid of a starting caliber player for nothing in return. And I think that's what they're worried about. They're worried about, we already gave up on Jarvis Brownlee, and that looks like a bad deal. If we give up on Sweat, our fans are going to go nuts because we spent an entire year hyping up T'Vondre Sweat, saying, no, everybody else got it wrong. We got it right. And now we're saying, no, we got it wrong. Everybody else got it right. The same way they did when they moved J.C. Latham to right tackle. And that's something they need to be worried about, because I don't think there's a lot of public faith right now in Chad Brinker running the operation. And I think there's a lot of optimism or hope that they could see something out of Mike Borgonzi, but there's also not a lot of proof of concept that Mike Borgonzi knows what he's doing. And for some reason, everybody credits him or blames him for the Jarvis Brownlee trade. So that already looks like strike one. Again, I don't know why Borgonzi gets the blame or the credit instead of Brinker when Brinker's technically the one in charge, but I'll let you guys figure that out because you're the ones that are doing the assigning of the blame and giving the credit. So I think they're kind of testing the waters to see how Titan fans would react to a trade of T'Vondre Sweat because they think T'Vondre Sweat is a lazy fat ass, that everybody told us after the Titans drafted T'Vondre Sweat, he was in fact a lazy fat ass, only to hear the Titans say, no, you don't get it. He is not a lazy fat ass. And now it feels like the Titans are saying he's a lazy fat ass. Tough spot to be in. Again, if you can get him to play like he played last year, which is a run-stuffing DT who plays on first and second down. There was a big third down. It was the one late in the game where they threw the ball. I forget who caught it for the Chargers, but it was that 3rd down and 4 at the end of the game where Mike McCoy ended up challenging and he lost the spot because it was a great effort. I think it was Trey Harris, a great effort by Trey Harris to get the first down. And as they were getting ready for that 3rd and 4, you're down by 7 points. You've got 3 timeouts left, 3 minutes to go. I mean, that's a huge play in the game. A good team gets off the field, forces a punt, drives down, scores, and either sends the game into overtime or goes for 2 to try to win it right there in regulation. Now, you are not a good team, but in a football game, that is a big play. And T'Vondre Sweat was running off the field. And I'm not saying that's bad that T'Vondre Sweat was running off the field because T'Vondre Sweat is not a pass rusher. But 3 minutes to go in the 4th quarter in a critical 3rd down, and the 38th pick in the draft is coming off the field so a guy named James Lynch can run on the field. And that's why you suck as bad as you do. And so I think there is value in a run-stuffing DT. I don't think it's 38th pick in the draft value. I think it's 4th round value. I think it's $10 million value, but he's already on the team. So if you get rid of T'Vondre Sweat and you get nothing in return like you did with Jarvis Brownlee, then all you're going to be doing next year is you're going to go out into free agency and you're going to be looking for a run-stuffing DT. So if you're going to get rid of him, you better make sure of 2 things. Number 1, that he's not going to become the player that Ran Carthon thought that he was when you let him draft him. And number 2, you've got to get something good in return. I mean, Titan fans were not happy when Dorial Green Beckham got dealt, but they got Dennis Kelly in the trade, and that was a great trade. You cannot be Jarvis Brownlee on a T'Vondre Sweat trade. That's the one where I think the fans are going to say, whoa. 2 more years of contractual control. Granted, this guy's not a superstar. He's not as good as Titans Twitter thought he was going to be. But hold on now. Let's not, no. Hold on now. Let's not get too crazy, too carried away. I expect the Titans to be very active when it comes to the trade deadline. So I think that there will probably be a lot of noise, when it comes to what's going to happen tomorrow and Tuesday. Again, it's 3:00 Tuesday. In fact, I'm thinking we're normally on the air at 2:00. Should we be on the air at 3:00 on Tuesday instead of 2:00, just so that we can, get the trade deadline mix or whatever? I don't know if there's really going to be anything great that the Titans are going to be able to get out of this trade deadline, but they are trying to push the name Calvin Ridley out there because Ian Rappaport had a story today about it, and they are trying to push T'Vondre Sweat out there. And I do wonder how the fans are going to react if they give away T'Vondre Sweat for a bag of footballs. And my last thought on the T'Vondre Sweat trade front, if they were to do this, and I mean this in all seriousness, this would be my question at any press conference that they would be holding. What the fuck was Chad Brinker doing as the president of football operations? Because, again, I know that everybody believes that Rand picked all the players, all the bad ones. Rand picked all the bad players. And Chad is the voice of Amy. And that Chad is more of an administrative role, but Chad makes the final football decisions, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So in his season of being the president of football operations, his first year of being president of football operations, they hired Brian Callahan. They drafted J.C. Latham 7th with the idea that he could play left tackle. They've already gone back on that, moved him to right tackle. And they drafted T'Vondre Sweat with the 38th pick, turning down trade offers for that spot when the Rams, and I have seen evidence that told me the Rams have not made the same offer that they made for the 39th pick for the 38th pick. But with the Rams making that massive trade to 39, you have to wonder what the Titans left on the table to take T'Vondre Sweat. What was Chad Brinker doing? Was Chad Brinker in the corner for every one of these moves saying, don't do that, don't do it, don't do it? And then Rand Carthon made it? Like, and I'm not being like rude. I'm just being, I need to know the answer here. What was Chad Brinker doing? I mean, what was he not doing anything? And if he wasn't doing anything, how'd that get him a promotion? Somebody help me out here. So that's just the other thought on a potential T'Vondre Sweat trade. They spent all that money in free agency. They drafted J.C. Latham. That has not worked out. They've drafted T'Vondre Sweat, who they're looking to trade. And yet the guy who was there as president of football operations when they did all those things, who negotiated the L'Jarius Sneed trade, that guy is the guy who gets promoted. What am I missing here? So we shall see what the Titans end up doing as far as the deadline is concerned. Again, I do see a football team that's getting better. I have no faith in this coach or this coaching staff to take it any further than they've already taken it this year. I think the Titans will not win another game the rest of the season. Maybe they'll win a fluky one here or there, but this was the kind of game where the flukes were giving you a chance to win. Justin Herbert throws a pick six at the beginning of the game. Chimere Dike has a punt return for a touchdown. I mean, you had a shot. You had the ball in the fourth quarter, with a chance to do some damage, and you still lost. So I don't know if they're going to win another game the rest of the year. I can't wait for this season to end because the way I look at it is this. It's kind of like just reality in the NFL, which is at some point the Titans are going to have to get better again. I don't think it'll happen with Chad Brinker running the show, and I don't think it'll happen with Cam Ward as the quarterback. But again, at some point, they have to get better. They have to be good again. And no matter how many seasons away they are from doing that, it does feel to me like we're one day closer every day. We're one game closer every game. Now, next season may be a total wasteland, and then that's when they can get Brinker out of there, and they can get Cam out of there, and they can get Borgonzi out of there, and maybe fire a coach after 1 year, I don't know, and totally blow everything up and start over again, which is what they should have done for the last 3 years in a row. But you're still closer, even if you get to next season. Let's get to some of your reaction here on the program. Trent says, way closer than predicted. Hated those Wildcat calls as Cam is not the fastest guy in the world. Hope everybody is having a great Sunday. Yeah, I thought the Wildcat calls were stupid. I thought all the trick plays, let's run the flea flicker. Let's do this. Let's do that. I thought that was a little over the top. And I thought it was unnecessary. And I was not a fan of it. I think the play calling stinks. I think the offensive philosophy stinks. And if there's any saving grace, if you people believe in Cam and you think that Cam Ward, even though he didn't win at Miami, you think Cam Ward is some sort of franchise elevator who is going to be the Joe Burrow of this operation, the one thing I will say is they have really bad coaching, and perhaps next year they can get good coaching, but the word there is can. I'm not willing to say will get good coaching for next year. Scott says the offense scored 6 points. 6 points. And that includes in the fourth quarter when the Chargers basically were up by 10 with 7 minutes to go and went into the prevent defense. I mean, a pick six and DK's punt return. 14 points. You scored 20. Ugh. Brutal. One person says, and I guess this is in my comments, is saying, hey, I think Cam is not getting better, said with Mike McCoy, Callahan is the head coach. So again, I know how this league works. I know how the fans in this league operate. Cam, no matter what happens this year, Cam will get 0% of the blame because that's how this league works. I can't totally describe it. I don't totally understand it. But I guess it's just the will of the fans and the optimism and the belief, and Cam will not get blamed for anything this year. It'll all be the coach. It'll all be the roster. It'll all be, you can't blame Cam because of. But Cam's mechanics are Cam's fault. And the only person who's going to get Cam's mechanics better is Cam. But at the same time, what everybody's going to want to do this year, and maybe there's a chance you're right. I don't think you are, but maybe there's a chance you're right, is what a lot of people are going to want to do, is they're going to want to sit there and say, well, get him a real coach next year and let's see. But again, that's a big if. You have to actually get a good coach. And you've got Chad Brinker with the final say, regardless of what his actual fucking job is. You've got Chad Brinker with the final say as to who the next coach is going to be. And Chad Brinker's already proven himself to be a fucking moron. Okay. Can I just tell you the truth about the Titans, about Brinker and Burke Nihill and kind of this new Amy? These guys don't know what the fuck they're doing. And people get mad at me when I say this, and I think they get mad at me because it's the truth. But I mean, look at the play-by-play guy. He's awful. Yeah, I listened to part of the third quarter today. That 99-yard drive where they didn't get it. I listened to part of the third quarter today, and to go from Mike Keith, who was a good play-by-play guy. I don't think Mike Keith's the greatest play-by-play guy who ever lived, but Mike Keith is a good play-by-play guy. To go from Mike Keith on the radio to this guy who's got zero chemistry with Dave McGinnis. I mean, it is hard listening to this game. That is a sign that they don't know what they're doing. That's like going from Mike Vrabel to Brian Callahan as a coach. And these are the guys that brought you Callahan. And these are the guys that major in the minors, like worry about the good PR director, and they run him out of there because it's like, well, he does that. We got to get our PR better. You know what? I think you need to get your right tackle better. I think you need to worry about rushing the passer. You don't need to be worried about PR public relations. You need to be worried about PR pass rush. But Brinker and Burke, they're too worried about the other shit because they don't really know what they're doing. And so that's why, again, I'm kind of depressed because I'm so ready for this season to be over. There's almost nothing to be gained from the rest of this year. I mean, you would say like, hey, let's get Cam some more reps, but half those calls are wildcat plays anyway, so it's not like he gets anything out of that. So there's nothing to be gained from the rest of this year. So we're all just waiting for the season to end. And yet the people that are going to continue to chart the path forward continue to do dumb shit on a year in and year out basis. The people that told you Ran Carthon knew what he was doing and are now moving J.C. Latham to right tackle and trying to get rid of Tavondre Sweat are the same people who are going to be hiring the coach this upcoming season. How am I supposed to be excited about that? Chase says Brinker can't be trusted. Well, I would just say this. What is on Brinker's resume that gives him the credibility to be able to pull off a franchise rebuild? Nothing. At least Mike Borgonzi worked for the Chiefs as the assistant general manager. And I'm not saying I would have hired Mike Borgonzi, but when you're the assistant general manager of the Chiefs, then you get opportunities to go be a real general manager. But the problem is no matter what you want to tell me about the dynamics between Brinker and Borgonzi, no matter what you want to tell me about what you think Mike Borgonzi's authority is, as long as Chad Brinker has final say over every decision, Mike Borgonzi will not be a real, true general manager. And we don't even know if Mike Borgonzi would be a good real general manager or not. I don't know why I'm so worked up. Tom says, I don't know how you watch Ward and think he'll ever be able to win consistently in the NFL. I think that would be a good question, which is, again, it's like the guy that tweeted me this past week that was like, everybody except for Jared Stillman is convinced Cam Ward is a QB1. What is it that you see on these Sundays that make you think Cam Ward's going to be a franchise ace? And don't tell me what he doesn't have. Like, don't tell me that, well, with this roster, how can you? I'm not asking you what excuses can you make for it. I'm asking, what do you see that makes you think he's going to be that? Johnny says, hell, come September next year, Cam is still going to be the quarterback. Very exciting. I feel like that's sarcasm. Again, I think Cam was an overdrafted prospect who has talent, who will never reach it because the organization has already proven they have no idea what he actually is, and they have no idea how to foster it. You know, it's like, I think they talked themselves. I think the Titans got so carried away. And this is the sign of an inexperienced group. Brinker, Borgonzi, Callahan. This is the sign of an inexperienced group. I think they got so carried away by the interviews, the 12 minutes of sitting down with Cam Ward, the confidence that Cam Ward had. I think they got so carried away with that they overlooked the tangible assets that Ward as a high-end draft prospect didn't have. And I was talking to my dad about this when we were watching the game today. And I said, what's funny is we were talking about Tavondre Sweat. And we're talking about the dumb guy stay dumb, fat guy stay fat, injured guy stay injured thing. And I said, Mike Evans ran a 4.6 at the combine. And Mike Evans is a Hall of Fame player. He will go into the Hall of Fame. He is a great receiver. I love Mike Evans' game. But Bill Polian, who has a gold jacket and won a Super Bowl and went to 6 of them as a general manager, would not have drafted Mike Evans because Bill Polian does not draft anybody at receiver who runs a 4.5 or higher in the first round of the draft. And far too often people will say, oh my God, that's so stupid. You wouldn't have had Mike Evans. And you're right. There are exceptions to the rule, and you will not be enjoying those exceptions. But what it does is it standardizes how you miss. As in, you're not going to oversell yourself on somebody's personality to draft them with the first overall pick when they don't have the required talent to be able to play in the NFL. That's what I feel like the Titans did when it came to Cam Ward. Cam Ward is not big. Cam Ward does not have good mechanics. Cam Ward is not an elite athlete. Cam Ward does not have a single elite trait. He doesn't have Drake May's arm. He doesn't have Trevor Lawrence's size. He doesn't have a single elite trait. But I think they talked themselves into he's a bulldog. He went from a 0-star recruit to the number 1 pick. And that's great. But I mean, you're the number 1 pick, so let's start playing like it. But he doesn't have that talent. And that's what happens when you don't have those guardrails in place to say, look, we're not going to do that. If Floyd Reese was general manager of the Titans, he would have never drafted Jeffrey Simmons. So you'd be without him. But you also would have never drafted Corey Davis. You would have never drafted Caleb Farley, and you would have never traded for Julio Jones because he didn't get injured players. Period. So that's why those things exist. And I just don't think, I don't think the Titans have the right kind of process to build a roster. And this year, I think we've seen the process for developing the quarterback, to me, has just been non-existent. William says, the problem with this season is free agency and poor play calling. I feel bad for every rookie on this team. Well, I don't know why I'd feel bad for the rookies. I mean, don't like it, play better. It's kind of the way I feel. Why would I feel bad for Kevin Winston? What do I need to feel bad about? Alec Iomanner needs to catch the ball. I'm not feeling bad for him. I think Chimere DK is going to earn himself a bigger role in the NFL. I don't feel bad for him. Curtis says, we have the biggest cap space in modern NFL history, $140 million. Remember, the cap's fake. The question is, how much money will Amy actually spend? And secondly, and I think more importantly, it's So these are the guys that went out there, and these are the guys that are going to spend your $140 million. And you think that's going to make that big of a difference? I don't know what to tell you. Forrest says the only thing Cam does not have the talent Vince Young had. Vince was a ridiculous athlete. I was actually thinking about this. And like at the beginning of the third quarter, I left my parents' house to get ready to do the show. And I was sitting there before the start of the second half. And I was thinking about, man, Cam had 53 passing yards at the half. And I'm like, do these people forget? Do they forget what Vince Young was like? Because Vince Young might have had 53 yards at the half, but they would have had way more total yards. And Vince just made explosive plays. And it's like, we're going to say Cam's going to be the guy when Cam throws for 145 yards in a game. We're going to say, he's the guy. He's going to be a star. He's going to be the man. He's going to be the, and we do that. But like with Vince Young, he was doing that. And he didn't become that kind of player. David says the complete front office is a joke. They drafted a bunch of bums that they're trying to trade off. The quarterback is average at best and can't throw the ball for 200 yards a game. And that is with Cam, he's kind of picked up a lot of garbage time stats. Cam entered the fourth quarter today. I want to make sure I have this written down somewhere here. Cam entered the fourth quarter today. Why do I not have my little? I don't know. I don't know where I put my little piece of paper that I wrote on. Cam entered the fourth quarter today with like 83 yards passing. 83 yards passing. Just brutal. Whoa. Juan says, Cam progressing with ass coaches. So ask yourself, is the play calling and the quarterback coach killing him like they did with Vince Young? I don't know. The problem is in the end, it didn't matter. Like with Vince Young, I believe that if Jeff Fisher had embraced Vince Young would have had a much, much, much better career. A lot of people say that that's not true, that Vince had the bad personality and whatever. But I believe that Jeff Fisher never embraced Vince Young, had bad offensive coaches around him, and tried to get Vince to conform to an offensive style that wasn't right for him. I will agree with you. The coaching for this team is atrocious. I mean, Brian Callahan, and somebody said this to me this week, and I thought it was very insightful. And they said, no matter what Brian Callahan tells you, he doesn't want to run the ball. Cincinnati didn't run the ball. Yes, they had, what's his name? The guy that, the running back in Cincinnati. Why does his name escape me? He's with Houston now. Joe Mixon. They had Joe Mixon, but Cincinnati was not running the ball. They were throwing the ball down the field to the receivers, to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. And so Brian Callahan wants to come in here and do this without Joe Burrow, without T. Higgins, without Jamar Chase. And that's what he's going to want to do. The same things that he learned in Denver that they did with Peyton Manning, that's what he wants to. The problem is that with this young quarterback, they need to be a run-first team. But they're not going to change. So when you tell me like, oh, these coaches suck, but next year they'll have better coaches, I'm like, what's the guarantee they'll have better coaches? And again, if you don't have better coaching, or if you don't get a better team around him by next year, then it doesn't matter if it's his fault or not. The results are the same, and that is that he won't be good enough, and you'll be out there looking for another quarterback. One person says, you are right. This is two-person. If they do not win the rest of the games or something like that, then there is a problem. Get rid of the GM and get rid of the front office. I mean, I don't have any intel on this when it comes to what Amy's actually going to do. And last year, all the intel was no major changes. And then right before the end of the season, I heard Rand's out. And I reported it. And that ended up being what happened. I have no intel as to what Amy's going to do. All I have is just a gut feel. I don't think Amy's getting rid of Brinker or Borgonzi at the end of the year, no matter how bad it gets. No matter how bad. If they don't win another game this year, I think Chad Brinker stays on and picks the coach. And then if it's this bad next year, then they'll can Brinker and probably Borgonzi. And everybody will say, well, you need to give Matt Nagy a quarterback that he picked. Just like you said, you need to give Brian Callahan a quarterback that he picked. At some point, you got to blow the whole fucking thing up, and they just won't do it. Forrest says, Cam probably won't be elite because there's no elite trait or no trait that he is elite with. But I think he could be a solid starter down the road, maybe a low-end Dak. We need a number one wide receiver. Dak throws for 400 yards a game. Like, I know that passing yards, they're not all that matters when it comes to quarterback play. And I do think that Dak has his limitations, like that the Dallas Cowboys could have a great team, get into the playoffs, and Dak in an NFC title game or a divisional round game will get beaten by a better quarterback. I absolutely think that's a possibility. I think Jared Goff is in the same boat with the Lions. But at the same time, Dak throws for like 400 yards a game. The Cowboys have the number one offense in the league. You think Cam Ward is going to become a low-end Dak, which is, again, the number one offense in the NFL? Give me a break. I think you're looking at a Kyler Murray level quarterback. A Kyler Murray. Again, I just looked it up earlier today. Arizona is 2-5. Hell, Kyler lost to you. That's what I feel like they are. Drake says, let's be on trade watch with potential to go later that day. So Drake wants me to be on the show at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. Again, the deadline is at 3 o'clock on Tuesday. And the question I have is, when do we want to get on the air, and do we go on at 3 after the deadline to react to what the Titans did do? And I do think the Titans are going to make some trades. But do we want to go on at 3 after the deadline, or do we want to go on at the normal time 2? And I think he's saying go on at 2, talk about what they may do, and then have the potential to go on if they make trades. Well, that's a lot of work for me to do, but hey, that's fine. Whatever it may be. One person says, I appreciate your honesty about Cam Ward. This fan base still thinks he is Mahomes, and you can't tell delusional fans or Homer media people anything different. I know. What drives me crazy is about, like, when I'm right. You know, I've had to talk about Anthony Richardson 100 times and said, hey, if I was the general manager of the Colts, I might be packing up my bags and on my way out because I might be fired because I would have taken Anthony Richardson. I would have taken Anthony Richardson number 1 overall if I were the Carolina Panthers that year. Now, I wouldn't have made that trade, but I would have taken him number 1. I would have taken him number 2 if I was the Houston Texans. I would have taken him number 3. I would have traded, well, I hate Kyler Murray. I would have taken him number 3 if I was Arizona. I would have taken him number 4 if I was Indianapolis. I would have traded up from number 11 to number 4 if I could, to number 3. If I could, to take Anthony Richardson, sit him on the bench and try to develop him. And maybe I'd be packing up my desk and my bags and everything else as general manager and moving on. But I would say that the one thing that I wish I got more credit for all the times that Titans Twitter was like, you idiot! Because I feel like I call out very basic things that are obvious, like Rand Carthon's incompetence. And then when I'm right about that, it's never like, man, Jared was right about J.C. Latham 7th overall. Man, Jared was right about T'Vondre Sweat. No, it's just I'm a hater and doing it for clicks all the time. Like, is there anybody out there? If you're out there, tell me. Is there one person out there that says, you know what? Jared was right about a lot of these things, being very skeptical of T'Vondre Sweat in the second round, being very skeptical of J.C. Latham playing left tackle, very skeptical of Nicholas Petit-Frere and Jalen Duncan at right tackle because Bill Callahan will get it fixed. Maybe Jared's right about being skeptical about Cam Ward. Is there anybody out there that feels that way? Or is it just, no, he's doing it for clicks. He's doing it because he's a hater. And I'm dead serious when I ask that question. That's all I ask. For whatever it's worth. Bobby says, even Drew Brees said a young quarterback needs at least 50 starts to see if he's worth the pick. Let's improve first and then judge. Question. Did we not give Will Levis 50 starts? Oh, we did not. So we didn't give Will Levis 50 starts, but you want to give Cam Ward 50 starts. Now, the reason you want to give Cam Ward 50 starts, I believe, is because you drafted him number 1 overall. You didn't draft Will Levis number 1 overall. But I think as far as talent is concerned, like the number 1 overall quarterback that you have in your brain, I'm telling you, Drake May and Caleb Williams and Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow and Cam Ward is closer just from a sheer talent standpoint. In my opinion, Cam Ward is closer to Will Levis's talent than he was to Joe Burrow's or Trevor Lawrence's. So now you want to give 50 starts. We have to give 50 starts to Will Levis. You can give Cam 50 starts. That's fine. I'm just telling you, with this infrastructure, with these guys that thought that, hey, running him out there with really no plan, and with Brian Callahan as his coach and no running game and no edge rushers on defense, if those guys are the ones presiding over him for 50 starts, it's not going to get much better. Like, you can give him his 50 starts, and there will be certain things that will be better after 50 games. But again, this was the number 1 pick in the draft. You want a Hall of Fame quarterback. You want an elite franchise-changing quarterback. And I don't think he'll ever be that. And I don't think I need to see 50 starts for me to think that that's what it's going to be. Again, they had their press conferences. We are not allowed to run the press conferences live because the Titans, as an organization, are more worried about that than they are about putting a winning product on the field. But apparently, when it comes to what was said, and trying to see if there's anything that stood out at this point, like, what do you say? You're 1-8. You're 1-8. You're going into the bye. It's like, everybody have a good week. And if you're still on the team, you're still on the team. And if not, see ya. Mike McCoy said, our guys worked hard. This is Corey and Jim Wyatt. Our guys worked hard. We have to play better on Sundays. Self-inflicted wounds, lack of execution. We have to keep working and looking for ways to improve moving forward. Maybe not run everything out of the Wildcat all the time. Bobby says J.C. Latham is a guard. Trevor was the one who, when they drafted J.C. Latham, was like, I actually think J.C. Latham would be best at guard. And when he said that, I was like, oh, no. I think Trevor might be onto something there. So halfway through the season, the Titans are 1-8. The trade deadline is on Tuesday. They are off this week, which means no postgame live next week, for whatever that's worth. Boy, it's a depressing time to be a Titan fan. Their favorite excuse is he is just a rookie, or look at the team around him, or let's give him more starts. Guys, Cam Ward is not elite, period. What has Cam done that makes you think that he is elite? That if you had a good coach, or you had a good team, or you had that he would be Mahomes? Like, what I'm serious. What is there that makes you think that? That's it for us. Great show today, post-game live. Again, tough one for the Titans. They are getting better as a team, though I am worried about the quarterback. Trade deadline on Tuesday, and I think the Titans will be very active. Keep it right here. Like and subscribe. Hit that like button. Use it all. Just hit it, hit it, hit it. Like that like button. Tell your friends, subscribe, everything else, and we will see everybody tomorrow live, 2 o'clock for a Titans Monday.